everyone, Kelly here, and today I want to talk about the books that I read in February. Just making sure I had the right month because it feels like I've been waiting forever to do this video because we're, like 19 days into March, and I've had the stack of books to review like sitting next to me on like the end table for this whole like 19 days of March, and I just haven't sat down to film it. And hopefully I can be coherent. I feel like I've been doing really good at these like Friday reads videos where I just kind of chat and whatever comes to my mind. But now I have to like talk about a synopsis. I have to talk about succinct thoughts about a book. So let's see how it goes. I'm going to do these in the order of like least favorite to most favorite and start with DNF. And so one of the things that was my goal in February was that I was reading like booktuber favorites, and of course I didn't write down whose favorites these were, if they were, most of these were from that list except for like two, and I didn't always write down who it was, so if I remember I will tell you. But yeah, the DNF was this is a graphic novel called If You'll Have Me by Uni, and there was nothing wrong with this. I just got into it just a few pages and I was realizing I think like a contemporary romance graphic novel is just not my thing. And so I just wasn't like feeling compelled to keep reading it. And so I put it down. I think this was recommended by Bethany from Beautifully Bookish Bethany. And I'm sure it's great and sweet and cute. It just wasn't what I was interested in that moment. So I decided I was trying to put things down if I wasn't loving them, which you'll see in my 3 stars. Was not very successful, but for this one, I think by the time I got to this one, I'd had a couple of 3 stars, and I was like, no, I don't need to like keep reading things that I'm not super interested in the moment. So then I had 2 3 stars, and neither of these do I like regret reading necessarily, but I've learned some things from them about like what I want to read from these authors in the future and what I should put down and stuff like that. So the first one, this was not a booktuber favorite. This was just something I had been hearing people recommend, the author I've heard people recommend, and that is Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. And like I said, I gave this one 3 stars. And I haven't heard people necessarily recommending this specific one, but people talk about Ali Hazelwood all the time. And I have been really hesitant to pick up her adult stuff because everybody says they're like Raylo fan fiction and stuff like that, and it's just not. Raylo is not a ship that I have any interest in, so like that kind of taints my view of some of those. So I thought, well, I'll pick up her young adult romance. I'll pick this up, see if I like the writing style, and if I do, then I will pick up her adult ones and try to push that whole like Raylo ship out of my mind when I'm reading them. And for reading this one, I just don't think Ali Hazelwood will be for me. I don't think that this was a bad book. Like I said, I gave it 3 stars. Not a bad book, but not exactly like one that I was like super excited about or becoming a new favorite or anything like that. This is following 2 people that are in the chess world. And so our main character, I don't remember her name because I listened to this in audiobook, so I don't have a physical book. And she was really good at chess when she was younger. Her dad was like kind of grooming her to be a chess champion. And then something happened in her childhood that made it so that she gave up chess and didn't want to play chess anymore. And then now she's graduating from high school. She's feeling like she has to take care of her younger sisters and like stay at home instead of go to college and like get a job, all that. And some circumstances happen that she ends up like back in the chess world to make money. And, so she's developing her skills at chess again in order to make money for her family. And then her love interest, or the person who eventually turns into her love interest, they kind of don't start out that way. Like most books, they start out kind of opposing forces and then end up together, is a guy who's number 1. I think he's number 1 in the world in chess. Yeah. And so they don't start off on the right note necessarily. And she is really hesitant about even being in the chess world. And so she's building up her skills. And one of the things that didn't make this book super successful for me, which I might try one of her adults because this might not happen in the adult. Young adult, things kind of move a little more slowly because it's for a young adult audience. in the romance. And so this did not really become a romance really until towards the end. The majority of the book is really her, you know, entering into the professional chess world, her learning about that, us learning about the whole world of chess, and like her dealing with a lot of issues with her family and internal issues that she had, you know, like things that she hasn't worked through. So kind of almost coming of age, but like she's an adult, like she's 19, but still like her dealing with kind of issues now that she is an adult out in the world, needing to figure out what to do with her life after high school. So I feel like most of the book is that, and then there is like a romance towards the end. And you can see it like coming the whole time, but it doesn't really feel like a romance till towards the end. And so I wasn't super invested because yes, the chess part was interesting, but I wanted to read this book because I wanted a fun, fast romance, and that wasn't what I was getting, so I didn't read it quite as fun and fast as I thought I was going to. So maybe I would try out one of her adult ones because I think it would focus more on the romance, because I would assume that they would need to kind of develop it faster, since an adult romance would have more like, you know, of the sexy times that you have to build up to or whatever. So maybe I'll try one, but for the most part, I wouldn't love this. I also did not love the main character. I get like creating drama in a book, and you know, she is only 19, so she's learning a lot about being an adult, but she would drive me nuts with her, like her choices in life. So I don't know if that is more on the young adult side that is what would bother me, or if Ali Hazelwood's main characters would bother me. So I think what I would do is I would try one of her adult romances, but I would be willing to DNF, like would be willing to put it down if I'm not loving it. So I want to go into one of her adult books with caution, knowing that maybe she's not the author for me, but I would try one of her adults because I'm assuming it's written a little different than her young adult. So nothing really wrong with this. I'm sure for a younger, like I would recommend this probably for someone that's around that like 18 to 20 age range. I think they would appreciate it more than I did. But yeah, wasn't exactly what I was going in looking for. And then my other 3-star was Lone Women by Victor LaValle. And I really thought this was going to be like a 5-star. So actually, I don't even know who I said recommended this because as a booktuber favorite, because it was on several people's list. It was probably on like 4 different people's list of the people that I was like picking from. So I was really excited to read this. And this is one of those books that I get why other people really love it. It just didn't work for me with the way the direction it ended up going. I was like super invested at the beginning. I loved the writing at the beginning. I loved our main character. I was like super into it. I guess I need to tell you a little bit of the plot. This is one of those you don't want to know much going in. But it's following this woman who, in the first chapter, we see that she is leaving town with a trunk. Something is going on with the trunk. We don't know what, but we know that her parents have died and that she is like burying the evidence of her parents having died and leaving town and getting away. And that's basically the setup. And then she's going to be like homesteading in, I think it's like Montana, Wyoming, something up there, Montana. So that's kind of like the setup. She's going off to homestead, be on her own, escaping from like everything that she's leaving behind in California. And that part I really enjoyed. So the beginning, her like the mystery of what's in the trunk, what happened to her parents, her like starting her homestead was super interesting because she's just going off. She's got nothing. She's just starting fresh. This is like, when is this? Is this the 1800s? 1915. So at a time where there wasn't a lot, she just is going someplace where she just has like a little cabin with nothing in it, basically in the middle of nowhere. And she's got to start her life on her own. So I found that part really interesting. I would have said that the first third of this book was 5 stars. I was super invested, really liking. And then, you know, the author just had a different plan in mind and it just wasn't what I enjoyed. So I was liking this whole like survival, homesteading, what's in the trunk. And then we kind of get that reveal early. And so then I was like, well, I don't really care for the direction this is going in. And it also kind of like added in more characters that I wasn't invested in either. And so I don't know, if this had been like a novella that was more along with what was going on in the beginning, it could have been 5 stars. But I would say the whole like rest of the book was 2 to 3 stars for me. I just was not enjoying it where it went. But I get why other people are liking it. Other people might like where it went. It just wasn't for me where it ended up going. So I get why other people like this, but this was a 3-star for me. I would try other things from the author, especially since he has written other things that are novellas. And I think that I would start with his novellas first, because I think I like his concepts, but maybe I wouldn't like as much long form, that I want like the shorter versions of what he has. So I'm going to try his probably one of his novellas first before moving into another one of his like full-length novels, to kind of see if I'm right that I would like him more in short form. So that is my thought on that. Now we're moving on to my 4-star. Wait, are all these 4 stars? Yeah. So the rest of the things I have are all 4 stars. So first is one that was not a booktuber recommended. This was part of a buddy read I did with a group of ladies, The Golden Spoon by Jessa Maxwell. And this is basically a kind of murder mystery. It's like a combination of like murder mystery meets the Great British Baking Show. So this is a like American version of that show. What is it? It's called The Golden Spoon. Duh. So the show itself is called The Golden Spoon, but it definitely, you can tell it has the vibes of the British Bake Off, like, because it's talking about how it's one of those shows where everybody's nice to each other, and it has that kind of, it's in a tent outside of a big manor house and all this stuff. So it's definitely like the American version of that. And we are following all of the perspectives. So the woman who like is the judge and runs the Golden Spoon show, and then all of the contestants. So I'm glad I did have an audiobook of this, but I also had the physical book, so I could go back and like at the very beginning there is like a section that has all of the people laid out. It's like a press release for the show, but it gives you a little bit of a biography of each person, and that was helpful having that reference. So if I got to somebody and I was like, oh, who was this again, I could like check in the physical book, oh, this is the I mean, I don't remember who they are now, but like everybody, you know, like this is the CEO, this is the older woman, you know, the retired contestant, because, you know, there's always like an older woman, there's always like a younger person that's just starting new to baking, and like, you know, they had a lot of the like stereotypes of the show. But yeah, so like we see like a few days of the show, and then like something happens, and then we have to solve that. And I just thought this was really enjoyable. I gave it 4 stars. It was a good time. It wasn't the most like twisty kind of thing or anything like that. Like, it's a pretty straightforward kind of mystery, but I more just enjoyed the like kind of cozy vibe of the baking show, and like learning about each of the contestants and their interactions and all that stuff. And then, oh yeah, we have a murder mystery thrown in there too. So it wasn't like I was in it for the murder mystery. I was more in it for the, like the cozy vibes, which will make it interesting about me picking up another book by this author, because I think it was this whole like show, like being a baking show, that made this fun and interesting to me. So I'd be interested to see what this author does next, and if I will be as invested, because I didn't think like the murder mystery was all that like surprising or exciting. So I'm kind of curious what she'll write next. But this one I found really enjoyable. If you watch the Great British Baking Show, I would suggest this, just because it's kind of a fun thing to read if you watch that show. And then one of the favorites, this was a favorite of the podcast, currently reading. I read Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, and this one I also gave 4 stars. And this one is like one of those that like blew up on TikTok, was really popular, and I was like, ooh, do I really want to read this? Because I hate being like someone that wants to poo-poo on everybody's favorite, so I was like, maybe I should avoid it because so many people are loving it. But I just thought it sounded really interesting, so I did want to pick it up. And I ended up enjoying it. I didn't end up loving it like some people are like, oh, it's like the best thing ever. Or like, it was really enjoyable and fun and fast read for me, but not like a new favorite. Like, as in, I have the second book. I've had the second book from the library for like 3 weeks now and haven't picked it up. So I'm not like that loving it, that I am like, I need to pick up the second one right away. I do want to read the second one just because the duology, and want to be great to just complete a series. And I am interested in what happens next, but I'm not like dying to know. So this wasn't like new favorite, but I found it enjoyable. I liked the writing. I thought it was fun. So this is a story about a woman. Sorry, it's been a while since I've read this, and I read it very quickly. I read it in like 2 or 3 days because it is very readable. And so we are following this woman who, she is a reporter, and her brother is off at war. This is kind of like a fictional world where they're having a war between gods. Like there's 2 gods warring against each other, and they have like humans as their soldiers. And so her brother's off at war. She is kind of like taking care, her mother is kind of not able to really take care of. She's like has some mental depression, things like that are making it so she's not taking care of the family. So this woman who I like, since I don't have the book with me, I don't remember her name, but she is like taking care of things, you know, working as a reporter. And then she decides she's going to go and be a war correspondent at the war, see if she can find her brother and all that. So that's kind of like what the main plot is. She's going off to be a war correspondent. She's also having like this kind of like You've Got Mail thing where she is writing letters to somebody, and she doesn't know who that person is, but she's feeling a connection. And then there's a guy at her office, another reporter who she does not like, that they do not get along. And so like, it's totally You've Got Mail, but in the fantasy gods warring version. So yes, so it's romance, there's war going on, fantastical war. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it's well written. I think it's like well paced. Like the whole time I was invested in both their relationship and what was going on in the greater world. But like I said, not a new favorite, but very entertaining. You know, read it in like 3 days. I'm expecting that when I do pick up the second one in the next week or so, that I'll probably read that one in 3 days as well, because I think her writing lends to that. I would be interested in reading more by Rebecca Ross, because I did find this one enjoyable. And then the last book I want to talk about is A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. And this is kind of like a Southern Gothic horror kind of book. We are following a woman who, now that I have the book, what is her name? Sam. So Sam is going to stay with her mother in her childhood home, which belonged to her grandmother first. So it was her grandmother's home. They lived with their grandmother when she was a child, and now her mother has inherited the house, and she's going back to spend some time with her mom. And things are just like kind of weird at the house. I want to see what's in the synopsis. She's like, her home isn't what it used to be. So like her mom, when she took over the house after the grandmother had died, she kind of like made it her own and made it cozy and, you know, painted it a lot of colors. Well, now she goes home and her mom has painted it all like basic beige, kind of like her grandmother had it. Put back up the like old simplistic like art that her grandmother had instead of kind of like the fun, you know, art that her mom had. So it feels like it's reverting back to her grandmother's home. And she's like, what's going on with my mom? Is she like having like dementia, or is she like having something that is making her like revert back to when her mother was alive, so like the grandmother was alive. So yeah, there's just kind of this ominous feel to the home of like what is going on, and her mother isn't like wanting to really like talk about it, is like hush-hushing about like talking about any of it. So it kind of gives you this overall ominous feel without anything really happening at first. And so it's kind of like that slow like fall into like something is off, and what is it, but we're not gonna find out about it right away. It's like just like slowly getting there. So this is not like a fast-paced book, but I like that. I like that kind of like slow creep of like, what is it that's going on in this home, and what is like really happening, and what is like, oh, is that actually happening? Because it doesn't feel like outright like scary thing jumping out at you. It just feels like something's a little off. Yeah, so I don't know, I don't want to like give anything away, but because it's so slow moving, it's hard to tell you what this is about, because I actually would not suggest reading the synopsis, because once you get past the like first paragraph of the synopsis, it talks about stuff that happens very far in, like 3/4 of the way into the book. And I think it's because it's such a slow like creep up that like they don't really have much to put in the synopsis, because most of the things that you would like talk about, like the inciting incident kind of things, don't happen till later in the book. So I wouldn't suggest reading the synopsis because I think it kind of like spoils where we're going with the creep factor or the slow dread or whatever you want to call it. But I really enjoy this. I like that T. Kingfisher chooses that when she does like this is more contemporary, like obviously there is stuff happening, like paranormal type stuff happening, but it is rooted in like, these are like a real place. And is it North Carolina? South Carolina? North Carolina. This is a real place in North Carolina, in our world, all that stuff. She feels very logical, the main character. And I love that she picks these like just normal people in their I think she's in her 30s, has a job, very logical, is just like, feels like there's something going on, but she's like, well, I'm going to explain that away because I am a logical, normal person. You know, supernatural things don't exist. So she has like an explanation for everything. And I like that in a main character in a horror novel. I like it that and especially T. Kingfisher, I think writes these like middle-aged, logical women in a great way of like, I'm going to explain this away. There's a reason these things are happening until like it gets to the point of like, I do not have an explanation for this anymore. And so I liked following this like character. I thought she was just, when I say interesting, it's not really because she doesn't have, you know, anything really that interesting about her because she is just an average person. But that's what I found interesting about her because so many times you're following this person that's, you know, has some unique ability or like whatever, but this is just an average woman going home to visit her mom. And so I like it. I liked the pace of it. I think there will be people that won't enjoy it because they want more to happen, but this really, not much really happens until later in the book. So you're just kind of like feeling unsettled for a lot of it. And I like that kind of horror because I don't really want to have my horror like constantly like a jump scare. I want it to kind of just feel unsettling until we finally find out what's going on. So yeah, I enjoyed this. 4 stars. It wasn't a new favorite. I feel like a lot of times T. Kingfisher does land in 4 stars for me because there might be like a little bit missing, but I still like think it's a solid read. Really enjoyed it and will continue to pick up her work because I love how she just kind of centers these normal people in abnormal situations and stuff like that. So that's it for me. I enjoyed several things that I read this month. Did have a couple 3 stars, did have a DNF, but a few 4 stars, things that I would read. I liked, even if the ones I didn't love this month, I'm like seeing some authors that I might want to try again or try in certain like parameters. So I thought it was a good month of kind of reading what people's favorites are. I have started some other booktuber favorites that month, but then because I switched to reading middle grade in March, I put some of them down, but I have a plan to like finish them. So I have about, I think 3 or 4 other books that were booktuber favorites that I have started, kind of put a pause on to read some middle grade, but I will be reading some more booktuber favorites. Probably in April, I'll finish up those books. So I am still like wanting to read other favorites because I thought this was overall a positive experience and kind of seeing what's popular out there and what other people are enjoying and seeing what I like about those books. And that's it for me. If you want to talk about any of these, I would love to hear from you down below and I will see you next time. Bye.